morning everyone. So I am going to present today very basics of ECMO equipments and circuits. So if we say the ECLS, that is the extracorporeal life support circuit, it is basically designed to support the functions of failing respiratory and or cardiac system. When we look at the diagram, basically this is the very basic diagram for the ECMO circuits. The one which is you see near to the patient's neck, it is basically the cannula, from where the venous drainage occurs. The cannula which connects to after that it is the tubings. So tubings is again it's a connecting junction between the cannula and the rest of the part of the circuit. After that the blood comes from the venous side, it comes to the bladder. Bladder is basically the protective system where we can assess the especially the negative pressure. It prevents the negative pressure and hence the prevention of excess air embolism. After that the blood comes into the pump, which is nowadays we use the centrifugal pump, from where the blood revolves around the various impeller discs. From there blood goes into the oxygenator, where blood gets oxygenated and then it gets diverted to the patient and the tubings, and after the tubing it goes to the patient's return cannula, which is called as arterial, mainly the arterial system in case of VA ECMO, and the another venous system in case of VV ECMO, especially if we see the respiratory system. This is very basic system. If we add various connections, like here we see the bridging, then we see the venous or saturation monitor. This is important because basically to prevent the recirculation. After that comes the bladder. Bladder, as I told, it is the preventive mechanism for the in the ECMO. Then comes the pressure monitors. Pressure monitors measures the venous pressure, especially the drainage pressure, and it should be less than 100 mm of mercury to prevent the spallation. After that, the various lever lock connections present, basically for the sampling, for the heparin infusion, and also for the any other drugs infusion. After that comes the air bubble detector. This is basically to prevent the air embolism. Then comes the second pressure monitor. This is to monitor the pressure of the return cannula. Then comes the temperature monitor. Again it measures the temperature, the output temperature to the patient. So these are all the additional connection which makes the circuit complex. So if we make the circuit simple, it is very easy to manage this system, and when we add any additional monitors into the circuit, it becomes more complex, and hence one needs to be very vigilant when the circuit becomes complex. Now various equipments of the ECMO are cannulas, blood pump, artificial lung, that is the oxygenator, then the various connectors, tubing, circuit monitoring, and temperature control device, which is called as heat exchanger. Out of this, the blood pump, artificial lung, that is oxygenator, and heat exchanger, they are the very important part of the ECMO. Now high blood flow rate may be required depending upon the degree of organ failure and metabolic needs. That means one has to look the patient clinically. If there is increased lactate, the patient perfusion is not good, one has to increase the flow rate. Various component needs to be corrected and selected and sized carefully before we start any ECMO. So it is again depends upon the patient's body surface area, patient's available venous size, especially the IJV or femoral site in terms of VA ECMO, and also if we are planning VA ECMO, we have to see the femoral vein as well as the femoral artery. Whichever we are using, one has to be very careful while selecting the various tubings and components. What is difference between ECMO and CPB? The one we use day to day in our life, CPB, it has got venous reservoir, suction cannula, and also the cardioplagia system. But ECMO, it doesn't have venous reservoir, suction cannula, and cardiotomy or cardioplagia system. So what is the advantage is that there is no direct air blood contact because we are removing the venous reservoir, and hence we are reducing the priming volume. The cannula and the tubings becomes automatically small, and hence the contact period is less, and we are decreasing the inflammatory response of the tubings. Then comes the oxygenator. Oxygenator is nothing but the true membrane, and there are various types of oxygenators like gas exchangers are available, which we do daily. They are depending upon the type of oxygenator. It works based on days or weeks. Polypropylene, it works for the 6 to 7 hours, and the one which we are using daily in ECMO, it is the polymethyl pentane, which works for 30 days. Now, if we see the historically, this is the guy who is in white shirt is the Theodore Kolobov. In 1960, he developed the silicon rubber membrane lung. The one which we are seeing here in the red round, it is basically a silicon rubber membrane lung. So, what is the importance of this? When they started, it mainly functioned based on the diffusion mechanism, like based upon the concentration of oxygen and carbon dioxide. The devices they used for 50 years and they discontinued in 2012 mainly because of its drawbacks like this silicon rubber. The longevity of this silicon rubber is less. What we are using today, polymethyl pentane, it works for 30 days. The lifespan of this oxygenator is very less. On top of that, the cannula or tubings, the size of the tubings are very lengthy. So, the contact period was very high, and hence the development of hemolysis and inflammation reaction is also very high. Secondly, the heat exchanger, the one we are using today, oxygenator, they are heat exchanger are the inbuilt part of the oxygenator. While in Kolobov's machine, the heat exchanger was out of the oxygenator. Hence, these were all the drawbacks for the silicon rubber membrane lung. However, it had an outstanding and reliable performance, and it is considered to be a gold standard for for gas exchangers. Now, if we see the tubings and the various components of the ECMO, they are basically a plastic made up of biomaterials and plastics, and they are typically anticoagulated like heparin, but however, it is again depends upon the institutional protocol whether to add heparin or not. Contains number of access ports like what we see here, the lever lock cannula. The circuit should be adequately length and lesser stopcocks. Now, again as I told, if the length of the circuit increases, obviously the contact period increases, the inflammatory response increases, and hence the chances of hemolysis are high. Secondly, the lesser stopcocks. If we use the lesser stopcocks, the chances of air embolism and the development of the thrombus into the inner part of the stopcocks are very high. So, as we use the lesser stopcocks, it is beneficial for the patient as well as for the person who is managing the ECMO. Another component is the DEHP, that is called as di-2-ethyl hexyl phthalate. It makes the PVC tubing flexible, but the problem is the leaching, which makes the risk for the male reproductive system. However, we are not using the DEHP nowadays because it has been removed from the ECMO system, but still it was one of the component which was problematic. Now, if we see the vascular cannulas, they are available in different sizes. It may be single lumen, it may be double lumen, it may be multifenestrated, it may be single end cannula. It again depends upon the patient's requirement and the feasibility of the operator. It is made up of the polyurethane with or without heparin coated. Sizes they are vary from 6 French to 51 French. And the most important thing in all the recently used cannulas, they are wire reinforced, and the chances of kinking are less and the functioning is efficient. Selection of the cannula, again it is based upon the patient's requirement, and again it depends upon the flow rate. The one which you are using the top, it is the return cannula, and if you see here, there is only one single end where there is a drainage, where there is a return occurs. It may be arterial or it may be venous. The drainage cannula, it has to be multifenestrated for the efficient drainage. This is basically we use into the IJV or femoral venous line for the drainage purpose. Another one is the double lumen cannula, where there is a dedicated 2 openings, one for the outer one is for the drainage and the inner one is for the return cannula. Now this is again the double lumen cannula. The again blood drainage and return ports are specially separated. The one here on the top, it is the drainage, and one near the after some distance it is the return cannula. Again, this is very important to place the dual dual lumen cannula, because its drainage, its return port should be adequately placed for the adequate result. There are three types of dual lumen cannula. One is the origin, which is available in 12, 15 and 18 French. Another is a Covidian, which is a 14 French. The problem with this cannula is they are not the wire reinforced. So the problem of kinking is very high. So another advancement which happened in the dual lumen cannula is the Avalon bicable cannula, which is a wire reinforced cannula, and hence the problem of problem of kinking is removed. Now the tubings. Now tubings, basically they are the conduit from cannula to oxygenator. Various tubings are available, like what we saw in the bridging, and also for the any renal replacement therapy you need to add another additional tubings. So any addition of the components such as isolated heat exchanger, circuit shunts, like that is recirculation line, oxygen saturation monitors, bubble detectors and alarms, the circuit becomes more complex. Again, desired flow is determined by the vascular access sites, drainage tubing diameter, cannula size, resistance and the pump properties. Depending upon the size of the cannula and tubings, you decide the flow rate. Like in 3 by 16 inch, the flow rate is 1.2 liter per minute, 1 by 4 inch 2.5 liter per minute. This is on an average. 3 by 8 inch, this is what we use in most of the adult patients. The flow is 5 liter per minute, and 1 by 2 inch is the for the 10 liter per minute flow rate. And volume to fill or prime the circuit or the tubings, it range from the 100 to 250 ml in neonates and 500 to 700 ml in adults. These are the various tubings. This is basically a VA ECMO, where the one tubing is acts as a drainage system, and another acts as a return system. Now comes the blood pumps. There are basically two types, subgroups of blood pumps. One is the occlusive pump and another is a non-occlusive pump. The one we use in nowadays in CPB, it is the roller pump. It has got the two heads which are placed at the 180 degrees. The tubings which are incorporated into this heads, this is very important, so that you prevent the excessive occlusion of the tubings, so that the chances of hemolysis you have to see in this roller pump. The another one we use in the ECMO circuit, it is the centrifugal pump. The advantage of centrifugal pump, the contact is very less into this. There are dedicated impeller discs which are present, which may be magnetically levitated or based upon the bearing. So the chances of hemolysis is very less in centrifugal pump. So basically there are two subgroups. One is occlusive and non-occlusive. Now if we see the roller pump, it requires a gravity drainage. As you see in this picture, they are dedicatedly positioned in a very dependent manner, so that the drainage occurs in a siphon effect. It generates a forward flow as a function of the tubing size and pump speed. Another component which is very important into the ECMO, it is the presence of the bladder, which you see into the yellow circle. It is the bladder. The roller pump must be servo regulated. Flow range from 1.5 to 2 liter per minute if we see the size of 1:4 French size, and depending upon what flow we require. Now comes the centrifugal pump. Now centrifugal pump has got a dedicated inlet and outlet. These are the impeller discs which are equidistant, and again they may be magnetically levitated or based on the small bearing. It generates a high pressure but use a relatively lower RPM compared to axial flow. Again, the mechanism of this centrifugal pump is based upon the fluid vortex formed by the rapidly spinning impeller. This is the overall the cut diagram of the centrifugal pump, where the blood comes from the top. This is the inlet. This is the magnetically levitated centrifugal pump, where magnet is floating in a liquid. These are the impeller blades, which are equidistant. The fluid or the blood comes from the inlet. It rotates with the impeller disc and go back to the fluid, that is outlet. The important thing in this, the magnetically levitated centrifugal pump, as compared to the small bearing, the contact time is very less, and hence the chances of hemolysis is also very less, and the inflammatory response is also decreased. Now, newer models have a longer pump head durability because of its latest advancement, and can be used for the prolonged extracorporeal circulation. Again, the most important part in the centrifugal pump, it is the preload and afterload dependent. So, whenever the preload decreases, centrifugal pump continues to give the output. So, in that case, the whatever the kinetic energy it generates to propel the blood, it gets converted into the heat. So, the heat loss increases. Secondly, it is again the afterload dependent. So, whenever there is a increase into the afterload, especially into the return cannula, where if it may be a venous or arterial line. So, whenever like any thrombosis, the afterload increase into the centrifugal pump. So, again in that case, the centrifugal pump again go into the, it will function as a normally, but again the kinetic energy will lose as a heat. So, one has to be very careful or vigilant whenever there is any changes into the venous drainage or any increased pressure into the return cannula. Again, this is the inlet pressure measurement system, or we can say the sensors, which detect any fall into the drainage cannula. Again, this is one of the advantage or preventive mechanism for the any excessive negative pressure which happens into the drainage cannula. As I told, whenever there is any thrombus or excessive negative pressure, there is a heat generation because the kinetic energy gets converted to the heat energy. Servo regulation is again provided by the level sensing or by the pump generator. This is the sensor which are present just before the centrifugal pump. Now, what are the pump related complications? Hemolysis, as I already told, hemolysis is because of the constant contact period, increased contact period, presence of the excessive pressure, especially into the roller pump. Cavitation is because of the excessive negative pressure into the drainage cannula. Thrombosis is because of the if the flow decreases, or whenever there is a increase or the lifespan of the oxygenator decreases, then there is a high chances of thrombosis. When the centrifugal pump stops, then there is a retrograde flow. This is especially into the VA ECMO, where arterial pressure is more than the venous pressure. Power failure, one has to be very careful for the power failure. The battery has to be properly charged. If there is a power failure, then one has to be ready with the manual hand crank. And obviously there is always a risk of air embolism. These are the hand cranks. These are the hand cranks which are mounted on the ECMO machine nowadays. Another component is the oxygenator. It is often referred to as an artificial lung. However, it is not a proper lung, because lung has other functions also apart from the oxygenation. The membrane oxygenator proved to be safer and more efficient. There are basically two types of oxygenator. One is the bubble oxygenator and another is a membrane oxygenator. The problem with the bubble oxygenator is there is a high risk of air embolism. However, the function of membrane oxygenator is very efficient, especially if we see the oxygenation function. This is the example of again the membrane oxygenation. The one which is present in this vertical diagram, it is basically the hollow fibers, and this is the one, and the gas flow that is called as sweep gas, which goes into the hollow fibers. This is the blood inlet where the blood comes into the membrane oxygenator. It wraps, blood wraps around the hollow fibers, and basically the gas diffusion occurs across this membrane. The blood gets oxygenated with the help of this sweep flow, and ultimately goes into the blood outlet. So gas which is present in the hollow fibers and blood it encircles the hollow fibers. It is again a concentration dependent gradient. Like gas diffusion, the gas flow has a higher oxygen concentration and the venous blood has a lower oxygen concentration, hence the diffusion occurs from gas flow to the blood, and on the reverse occurs with the carbon dioxide. Nowadays, what we use in our routine practice, the ECMO circuits, they have the oxygenator which are made up of the polymethyl pentane, where the diameter, outer diameter is 380 micrometer and the thickness is 90 micrometer. The advantage of this polymethyl pentane is they have a higher durability. They have a lesser chances of hemolysis, lesser requirement of priming volume, and also the plasma leakage is less, which is very problematic with propylene type of oxygenator. The case of oxygenator is immersed in a heating or cooling bath to allow thermoregulation. As I told, nowadays oxygenator, they are present with the integral part of the heat exchanger. O2 transfer is dependent upon the surface area of the membrane. If the surface area is large, the transfer is efficient. The FiO2 of the sweep gas, if it is higher FiO2, the oxygen transfer is also efficient. And the time the blood is in the contact with the membrane, the more the blood is in contact with the hollow fibers, the oxygen the transfer is also efficient. These are the various examples of the oxygenator. The one which we see here is the Lilliput type of oxygenator, where oxygenation occur vertically. The second one is the Meadows Halide type of oxygenator, where again the oxygenation occur vertically. The one we use in our setup is the Mackay type of oxygenator, which is basically a quadrangular shaped. Here the oxygenation and blood and oxygen transfer occur perpendicularly. The advantage of polymethyl pentane in all these oxygenator, they are very compactly placed, so the requirement of priming volume is decreased. There is something called as rated flow of the oxygenation, that is the amount of desaturated blood that can be nearly or fully saturated per minute. Now comes the heat exchanger. Now heat exchanger basically helps in the active warming and cooling. Newer devices are inbuilt with the oxygenator like what we use nowadays, where there is a oxygenator is the integral part of the heat exchanger. The material is made up of stainless steel, polyethylene terephthalate or polyurethane. The one in the red circle what you see here, it is the heat exchanger sockets. It very important thing into the heat exchanger, they have to be glued to the separate sterile blood path away from the non-sterile water path, because there are chances of infection, especially the mycobacterium which is commonly affected into the bloodstream. Now comes the circuit monitoring. Now whatever we have seen, they are the basic part or the important parts of the ECMO. Now circuit monitoring also is very important, because the operator has to monitor the ECMO constantly and the pressure of the circuits constantly. The P1 in the diagram, basically it is the pressure which is present before the pump. So the pressure should be less than 100 millimeter of mercury. If the pressure increases more than that, there is always a chance of chattering. Now there comes the P2. P2 is basically present between the pump and the oxygenator. The pressure of the P2 is always has to be more than the pressure of the P3, because if the pressure of the P3 increases, then there is an increased afterload and the functioning of the oxygenator becomes hampered. Now this is again very important to monitor the pressure. And another important thing is the RPM, the management of RPM. Based upon the requirement of the flow, the operator decides which is the better flow and what is the flow. For that, again, one has to see the constant clinical management, like lactate monitoring, the patient's pressure monitoring, patient's oxygenation monitoring. Based on that, one operator decides what is the exact blood flow rate that is required. Now, to summarize, the development of ECLS circuit components has progressed from early days, like whatever we have seen right from the silicon rubber oxygenator, now we are using to the polymethyl pentane. So, there is a tremendous advancement which has occurred. It is incumbent upon the practitioner to fully understand each and every component of the ECMO, and there it is again depends upon their local institution. This will enhance the physiologic understanding of the ECLS system and aid in troubleshooting when the situation arises that deviate from the normal clinical picture. In general, the target flow rate, as we already discussed, 100 to 150 ml per kg per minute for neonates, 80 to 100 ml per kg per minute for pediatrics, and 60 ml per kg per minute for adults. This is what we routinely practice, and based on that and patient's requirement, we change the flow rate. These are all my references. Thank you.